Hello friends, I am Karishma from A2 Talks. As I promised you in my previous video, today we will discuss about the authentication methodologies. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Okay, let's start with the authentication methodologies. Mostly we are confusing in the what is authentication and what is authorization. What is authentication? Authentication is something who they say they are, and what is authorization? Authorization gives permission to the access to a secure area or a system. Let's discuss about the authentication factor. There are three main authentication factor. First is something you know, something you are, something you have. Something you know. It might be pattern, any password, any pin, and any security pattern. Mostly we are using in our phones. But this is a very common method and it is a very weak mechanism but is still used in regular authentication. Next is something you have. It may be smart card, token, soft and hard token, authentication app, phone call, OTP, but this is mostly used in two-factor authentication. Next is something you are. It may be your fingerprint scan, your iris scan, retina scan, palm geography, palm topography, heart and pulse pattern, voice print, keystroke pattern, lots of things. Okay, but this is used in multi-factor authentication. That means combination of one or two. As we all know, mostly everything has pros and cons. Like that, authentication method also has the pros and cons. Let's start with the something you know. What is the pros? Easy to implement, low maintenance cost, traditional method of authentication. What is cons? Cons is easy to guess. If someone wants to guess my password, then he may relate to my name, my baby name, my date of birth, my family member name. So we can say easy to guess and maybe dictionary attack. And you should memorize your pattern and pin. Next is something you have. What is the pros of something you have? Better than password and enhance the image of the organization. But it also has the cons. What is the cons? Cons of something you have? That means if your card is lost, it can be misused. And suppose if you are using a magnetic stripe card, if someone borrow your card, he can within second or within minute, he can replace, copy your card and return you back. So it can be misused. Next is maintenance cost is maybe high. Next is something you are. That means biometric. What is the pros of biometric or something you are? It's very difficult to replicate. High security, more secure method, and user experience convenient and very fast. Nowadays, most probably we all are using the biometric. What is the cons of the something you are? Something you are, that means biometric. Biometric database can be hacked. If biometric database is hacked or compromised, it can be compromised forever. You cannot change your finger, you cannot change your eye. But if your card is stolen, hacked, you can change your password, you can change your card. Let's discuss about the multi-factor authentication. As we discuss, all the authentication factor has the pros and cons, and it develop a need of multi-factor authentication. So what is multi-factor authentication? Multi-factor authentication is combination of two or more authentication factors. It might be something you know and something you have. It might be something you have and something you are. Or it might be something you are or something you have. Anything. But what is the most important thing is authentication factor should be sequential, not in parallel. Let's take one real life example. Suppose we are going through the airport, then first we have to authenticate through the airline. Second is security check, and third we should authenticate at the immigration counter. Suppose these all are not in the sequence, it may be parallel. Either you can go through the security check, either you can go by the airline, or either you can immigrate. Then this is not the multi-factor authentication. You have to put all the factors in the sequence. Suppose if your first factor is compromised, then second factor should not be compromised. So if you are using multi-factor authentication, you should use two different type of factors. Suppose you are using pattern or any password at the first factor, you should use second factor something you are. It might be your fingerprint or your skin. Suppose you are using in first factor any password or pin, and you are also using the same password and pin in the second factor. So what will happen if your first factor is compromised, and it will automatically your second factor is also compromised. So there is no use for the multi-factor authentication. What is single sign-on? Single sign-on is the authentication scheme that allow users to log with a single ID to any several related apps or too many apps. Single sign-on also allow users to log once and access services without re-entering the password. These days, all the single sign-on provides softwares as the MFA capability. It reduces time spent re-entering password for the same identity. It also reduces the IT cost also and lower the number of IT help desk calls also. That means SSO improve user productivity, better network security and better session management. But what is the cons? Cons, it is very risky approach without MFA. If any credential breach may expose users full access to the hacker. Next is federated single sign-on. It is a single sign-on method which allow to use a single identity or credential between multiple domain. That means SSO is used for same domain, but federated single sign-on used with the multiple domain. When two domains are federated, that means a user can authenticate to one domain and access resource in the other domain as well. Federated single sign-on, also known as federated identity management, and it also follows some protocols like SAML, Auth, OpenID Connect, System for Cross-Domain Identity Management. Normally, federated SSO have two providers, IDP, that means identity provider, and second is SP, service provider. As you see in the slide, there are two providers. First is identity provider and second one is service provider. If a user wants some access or create a session, first they should authenticate. Then identity provider tell the service provider, I know the authenticate user, you can give the access and create one session. Next is adaptive authentication. What is adaptive authentication? It is also a multi-factor authentication, but it is deployed in the way to identity service provider system will select the right authentication factor depending on your location, your risk factor, your behavior, your access. There are three ways that adaptive authentication could be configured depending on IDP's capabilities. First, one, the set static policy defining risk label for different factors such as user role, user location, user access. Second is the system can learn the typical activities of users based on their tendencies over time. This learn for the adaptive authentication is similar to behavior. Third is you can use combination of both static or dynamic policies. As you can see in the slide, adaptive authentication enforces below MFA dynamically. It may be email verification, SMS, text verification, maybe make a phone call, push message you should allow or deny. It may be a smart card. And some derived credential, OTP and biometric authentication. Okay friends, so now we are completing our video. If you are like my video, please like, share and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.